BLM, which is run by 3 female members, and then not the topic of today's debate, Black Lives Matter, which I believe, and maybe Principal Angelou can better explain it, Black Americans feel that through much of our history, their lives do not matter to white Americans. So let's go with Vice Principal Angelou first. What is the Black Lives Matter movement all about, and is it misunderstood in the white community?
Thank you. So I first want to start off talking about the issue of race in general in America, because it's something that is uniquely strained in a way that I think a strain that does not exist in any other country, because Black Americans and white Americans are equally American, like by definition of American. We came here around the same time. We were born here. We're all American. And I think the idea of government, we must tell the government what we want. The government is only legitimate if they have the consent of the people who are governed. And the government also must look out for the interest of all people who are American and who are consenting to be governed. And the problem with that system is that those systems of government were created with inequality in mind. And with that inequality, I think that specifically the system of policing and the judicial system that supports it need reform. They need reform because they specifically do not protect Black and brown people the same way that they protect white people. So if we understand that all Black and brown and white people are American and do deserve the respect and protection of the government, then we have to declare that Black Lives Matter as a statement of fact. And that statement of fact is necessary, because if we just say all lives matter, then I think that we are negating the fact that we've said all for a long time. We said all men were created equal, and that was in the 1700s, and all men were not free at that time. They were not equal. We said all men were created equal a lot of different times. We said separate but equal, and we know that from the time of Homer Plessy, who was 7/8 white and 1/8 Black, he was not treated equally because of that 1/8 of Blackness. So there are so many times throughout our history that, you know, we could talk about history, but we can also talk about the right now, that have not been equal or fair or respectful or peaceful for Black people. And it's necessary to say specifically that Black lives are not protected so that we can fix some of the issues that we have with our government.
Great. Brian, would you like to respond?
Yeah, there's several points she made. First off, and I know we're going to respond to what each one said, but I think it's probably a good jumping off point. She mentions in the documents of being created equal. There is no dispute that people are created equal. That's not a government was created equal. That is, people were created equal by God. That's the defining statement. So there is no inequity in that statement at all. It's not something that Americans have ever shied away from. Were there bad actors in the history of the United States? Absolutely. There are people that were mass criminals, and nobody disputes that. But we fast forward to today, and we're now hearing Black Lives Matter as a separate argument, as opposed to people saying, well, all lives matter. What makes Black lives at a disadvantage in today's society? I would say they're not at a disadvantage. There are several things that Black folks get in the United States that white people actually are at a disadvantage. Fill out a job application. They immediately ask you what your race is. Why is that? Not so they can turn around and say, well, we want to hire white people. It's to say, well, we now have to hit quota systems in the United States. You get extra points on civil service exams. You're given treatment that people are not because of past injustices. All Lives Matter is not even a movement. It's just basically a reflection of the fact. We're not disputing that Black Lives Matter. Nobody is saying that Blacks are inferior. We're actually saying by all lives matter, everybody's included in that statement. There is no definition that anybody that I've heard that says Black lives matter, but not as much as white lives. The racism argument that you hear just doesn't exist in this country any longer. I don't see any laws that are passed. I would implore you to name me a law that exists on the books in the United States that says it's written as a discriminatory, that when Black people apply for a job, when they apply for any sort of benefits, when they apply for anything, they are at a disadvantage. It just doesn't exist. It's basically, we are now in a system that is run by what I'll call racial hustlers that make a living out of making black folks feel at a disadvantage when they're not. When the Al Sharptons of the world, the Jesse Jacksons, parade around through society and treat everybody as victimizations, they bang that into people's heads that they are victims when they're not. You know, Shelby Steele made a great comment that liberals, and I'm going to go into this in a little while, that liberalism really is the problem in the black community. They have been taken over by leftists and usually white liberals, where they tell people, we're going to give you housing, we're going to take care of your health concerns, we're going to take care of your jobs, we're going to take care of your employment, and we're going to right all the wrongs in society. It just doesn't exist. You cannot allow a nation to be overrun by socialist leftist policies, which is what Black Lives Matter has become. They've partnered up with the most radical of organizations in the country. They've teamed up with Antifa. And I know Joe Biden likes to say Antifa is just an idea. It's a reality. Those marches that you saw over the summertime with pure destruction were done by people partnered with domestic terrorists. Yet nobody wants to say it. And that's why I think we have the unrest that we have, because a movement has been hijacked. People who are looking for real equality have been hijacked, and that's all that we're seeing.
So let me ask you each a question, and then we're going to get to some callers.
Sure.
For you, you spoke well about All Lives Matter, but let me ask you, when I said that black Americans feel that through much of history that their lives do not matter, is that a basis for them believing that they need a movement called Black Lives Matter? Is it a reason that coming from hundreds of years of slavery and no one doing anything about it back then, do they have a right to say, okay, we need to get some equality here?
I would say no, because if you listen to the intro that you played from Denzel...
30 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Denzel Washington said it. He said it. You're not locking up 7-year-olds. It starts in the home. So if you correct the home...
No, that's not what I'm saying. Do they have a right to feel that in the past their lives did not matter? Not right now, in the past.
Yeah, but I'm bringing it to the present day. That's all I was doing in that 30 seconds. He says it starts in the home. So if it fixes in the home, doesn't society then benefit? And don't a lot of the problems that you see start to go away? I can get into all the statistics on people who are single-parent homes inside the black cities in the United States. I could do that. But yes, they do have a grievance. But at what point does the grievance end and you become part of society?
And can we really determine how long a grievance can stay within somebody? You know, I don't know. I wasn't in that position. What Tynes didn't get a really good treatment here as well. But can you give me can you demonstrate any laws that you feel are unequal?
So, well, yeah, I can demonstrate a lot of systems. So Black Lives Matter is calling on a change in systems. It's not talking about direct laws. I understand, and we understand that there are not laws that say black people are unequal, and that is part of the problem, that it's not about the laws being unequal, it's about the execution, that there is a sentiment that black people are treated a certain way by our systems of government. And I can look at how many people are killed, because the National Institute of Health produced a paper, a document that explained how often black people who are unarmed are killed by police officers. And unarmed white men and unarmed black men are killed 4 times more.
So let me ask you a question then when you finish, Chief.
One moment. In connection with police interactions. So my argument is not about the law. My argument is about the systems and how we interact with people who govern us.
So we have a caller online, so I want to just give me a 30-second response to this. So if it's about the system and the people enforcing the laws, that's usually the CEOs of the state or the county, and most of the crime is done within these big cities, Baltimore, Seattle, New York. They've all been run by the same people for generations, the same parties. Yet the people who live there, who complain about the police, who work under those administrations, and they usually have been Democrat, they don't vote them out. So where do we use the system as designed to vote out people who are not enforcing the laws properly?
So in a 30-second response, I don't think that I'm talking about crime when I talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about the institutions that are responsible for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm talking about systemic change in education and healthcare systems, in our judicial systems, in sentencing practices. I'm talking about the way that we interact with our tax dollars. So yes, speaking to our politicians is one of those important ways that we can interact with that government. Voting. I don't think just voting people out, but voting at all. A lot of times voting rights are taken away from people, so that's one of the issues. But yes, I am talking about how people interact with government and not necessarily crime that happens from place to place.
Okay, let's take a caller.
Just one point where she made the comment about unarmed blacks killed. Last year, or this year, I'm sorry, to date, 8 unarmed blacks, 11 unarmed whites. That's it. So the number that you gave about blacks being disproportionately killed by the police just isn't accurate. It's 8 to 11
based
right now.
Based on a report
This
from this
year
year
from the Washington Post, which is definitely not a conservative publication. 8 and 11.
Okay.
And unarmed doesn't mean unarmed. Unarmed could also mean you're going for a gun in a car, like we saw the one that I forgot his name a couple of weeks ago, where he went to the house and beat up the girlfriend, went out into the car and was shot. And it's sort of a mini riot where folks
So
went into the
we've
car.
been on lockdown for 8 months, and
Correct.
there have been some incidents of people who are unarmed being killed by the police, but we are specifically talking about the lack of justice. So when a white person is killed by a police officer, they're given justice. Black people are not given justice. They're found innocent or they're not tried at all, and that's the issue.
I disagree, and as I said, the stats bear it out, 8 to 11 this year. Lockdown has nothing to do with it. You still can commit crime in a lockdown. As a matter of fact, they have more opportunities.
But people haven't.
during a
Those numbers
lockdown.
are severely
They're
lowered.
not. It's not. Last year was 21 total between black
Okay.
and white was 21.
All right, let's get to a caller. Let's
Okay,
see what
no problem.
one of our callers. We have a couple of callers on. We have callers on line 1, 2, and 4. Let's go with Ken from Bethpage. Ken, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Cap? Great topic today. I have two comments, and I'll be happy to hear the feedback on those two comments. The first one is, you pointed out the Black Lives Matter, the BLM, the movement versus the organization, and I think that's part of the problem, because the organization, as we all know, was self-admitted in 2015 by one of the founders' colors, that they were trained Marxists, and she happened to train under Eric Mann, who was part of the radical group, the Weather Underground, which the FBI classified as a terror group. So by calling the cause the BLM movement, it gets very confusing, and people then automatically turn to the organization itself. I think that the message could be heard a little clearer. If it was something else, I don't know what else, but by taking the moniker of something that was existing, that clearly was, formed in a terror group, I think that's asking for this kind of debate and this kind of, the craziness that's been going on. The other thing I just let them point out is I hear constantly about reparations, because of what happened so long ago. Listen, I wasn't a slave. I wasn't a slave owner. I wasn't around. My parents weren't either. And I'm not minimizing the significance of it. I mean, I'm a minority myself, and we've been persecuted from generation to generation as well. So, what I don't understand is, when they say that they were slaves,
Right.
the people, the black people or black brown people were slaves, the ones that were brought here.
Ken?
Who brought him here? Was it the white people going around in Africa and going, with
Hey,
chicken
Ken.
nets? Or
Kenneth.
Yes.
We have 40 seconds left before our break. Can I just let Miss Angelou respond to that? We go on a break in 30.
You got it. Okay,
Thank you.
fine.
So I can't speak for any organization because I'm not part of any organization, but as an American who is in black skin and interested in seeing equality and equity for black people and for all people, I can say that we have to accept Black Lives Matter as a statement of fact that Black lives do matter. And about the other point.
5 seconds.
We must admit that we have inherited the situation of the past. If you are white, you've inherited the benefits of slavery, and if you are black, you've inherited
True.
That's not true.
Not true
And-
at all. 25.
Let's hold this thought till after the break. We have to do a short break. We'll be right back. Please remember to call in at 631-451-1039. We have our second half coming up. I want to thank you for listening in. If you'd like to call in and opine, please call in at 631-451-1039. This is our second round. It's sponsored by the great folks over at the Suffolk County PBA. Their continued support helps us care for vets in need. Suffolk County PBA is an amazing association with amazing members. Thank you, Suffolk County PBA. So we are in our final round. I explained to you the rules of the round. From the notes you took in the first round, try to find some sort of point that your opponent brought up and disprove it. So let's start with Brian for the second round.
Again, I don't know so much the point, but it's the overall message. Can you hear me? It's the argument that you made about the consent of the governed. So we have elections, and as Barack Obama told John McCain many years ago, elections have consequences. The will of the governed is reflected at the ballot box. The part that's being left out here a lot, and I think a lot of the problems in that the black communities experience are violence, are drugs, and then the police are being blamed in these areas for trying to curtail the violence. And the biggest victims of all this are the people that live in these neighborhoods. But there's an unspoken code where you cannot report crime, you cannot tell on people. You have people living in housing projects, you have people living in dilapidated buildings and homes. Look at Baltimore, St. Louis. You can look at any city, a major city, for Chicago especially. You have people being killed every weekend in Chicago. There's how many gun violence deaths? Little children gunned down. So do Black lives really matter? Because where is the demonstration against these folks? Where are the people out there in the streets with the same intensity that they had over the summertime, insisting that black-on-black crime has to be dealt with? 7,500 black Americans are killed by homicide each year. Majority of 90% are from gunfire. And why? Because there's a climate in the neighborhoods where young black youths feel the need they have to possess weapons to defend themselves. It's sort of a kill or be killed mentality. Is that really what this country needs to be? And you mentioned it earlier about the Democrats that are in charge. What are they doing other than lining their pockets? I could go down several of the civil rights leaders that have been in Congress that are multimillionaires. We can go straight from Maxine Waters on down. Are they really bettering their neighborhoods? Or are they more invested in lining their own pockets and lining their families' pockets? And where is all this money that Black Lives Matter has created? I had a stat here. I'm sorry I didn't have it ready because I didn't know I was going to be doing this. But right now, Apple pledged $100 million for a new racial equity and justice initiative. Facebook and Amazon, $10 million. Google, $12 million. Walmart, another $100 million. So if I say to you, that money is out there, and these organizations, you said to divorce Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, you cannot. Because that money is out there. It's not being spent. It's not helping any of these kids in these neighborhoods. And that's where I think the charade is and needs to be dealt with.
All right, Regi, you want to take 30 seconds to respond to him, and then we'll go with your point that you found in what he said and counter.
Yeah. So
30 seconds.
You mentioned crime in communities, and I do not know of any situation where there are people who are committing crimes in communities like Chicago or any of the other neighborhoods that you may be referring to who are considered innocent. They're not considered innocent. The problem that I am referring to is when our government and our systems that we rely on to be fair and equal and protect us, those systems are failing us and they are found to be perfectly fine. That's the issue that I'm talking about, not the crime in communities, because individual people who are in communities committing crimes, those people are being handled as criminals.
So this will I want you to now go back at him and find a point that you can disprove. But we want to go back to systems. Let's try to debate what Ms. Angelou was talking about when it comes to the systems. Okay, after she goes. Sure. All right.
Yeah, I'm just like flabbergasted that you stated that racism does not exist. I think it's laughable. I think that is laughable. And also when I mentioned that white people have inherited the benefits of slavery and of racism, I mean, we can specifically talk about property ownership. That land was specifically given to white people and not given to black people. That land that was granted all across the United States is what creates wealth. Ownership of land and homes create wealth. And when black people had the opportunity to buy homes after redlining and years of discriminatory economic practices, those subprime mortgage resulted in a housing crisis where black people lost 80% of their wealth. That is a specific issue. And when we talk about reparations, we're not just talking about, oh, give us some money. We're talking about the systems that have created wealth and opportunities for white people all throughout American history have not extended the same opportunities to black people. So those opportunities like affordable housing, like home ownership, business ownership, we're looking for those opportunities because it has not been equal. So this is not a argument that anybody's bad or anybody's good. It's that our government has given opportunities to some people and not to others.
So,
yeah.
Were you finished?
I can stop there.
I just want to touch on something. I'm an Italian. My family's all Italian. What's considered white? Because there's certain people who are within the white category who've only been here, less than 100 years, who, they didn't own plantations. When Italians came to this country, they were living in slave pens in the South and working the fields. So what is white?
So I can't define white because I think people define themselves, but I can define black. I think that my experience as a black person is one that is, I cannot identify with any other place than America, than being American. And I think that people who, they may be able to identify, I'm Italian, I'm Scottish, or any other thing, but when I am out and about in my daily life, I cannot hide the fact that I am black. There will be assumptions made about me because of my skin. No one knows that I have 2 master's degrees. I oh, you do? Did you know I had 2?
Yeah.
No one knows in any of these things about me. When I have an interaction with the police, when I have when I go apply for a job, no one knows that they see my name, they see my face, and there can be assumptions made about me. That is the same case in dealing with these systems that I keep referring to, and I'm talking about the economics, I'm talking about the banking system. I'm talking about just finding peace and power. It's hard to do that, to find peace and power in America. And that is something that, as a person who is an advocate for Black Lives Mattering, I'm looking for peace and power.
Okay, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Okay, so I found it interesting that you said you have 2 master's degrees. No racism stood in your way to get 2 master's degrees.
I went to a black university.
But it exists. You have black universities. That's If a country was systemically racist, how could you have a black university?
Well, I can speak a whole lot more about that.
Well,
because black athletes, which, athletics are what funds universities. The white universities that have taken black, are completely bolstered by black students who are playing football and basketball and everything else. Those black students once made black universities and created their money and created their endowments. These black universities are now failing because they don't have the money that they need to sustain themselves. And that's because the athletes that bring in the money are no longer going to those universities.
Okay, but my argument isn't about how the funding of the university. My argument is you yourself have 2 master's degrees. Nothing stopped you from getting educated.
We're using me as one specific person.
I'm using you as an example because you said you're a black woman in the United States, and you talk about almost, you allude to it, but you don't say it, systemic racism. There's nothing that stopped you from getting 2 degrees. Nothing that stopped you from a bachelor's degree.
There are a lot of things that stop a lot of people. I'm able to have this conversation because I have found ways around these systems.
Well,
I'm able to talk about how I've navigated them. I'm able to talk about the road that I've traveled.
So why don't you tell us?
Tell us how you navigate. Let me just get this.
Well, tell me tell us the hurdles that you had to navigate. That's important.
Yeah. So, firstly, I'm from Queens, New York.
You'll get your 30 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
I'm from Queens, New York. I had no thought or consideration about education at all until we had to move down south, and this was something that we didn't plan on. My older sisters didn't get the same. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. They didn't get the same opportunities that I had. They were not steered in the same way. I had to go down south to a place that is predominantly white, where I was one of a few black kids who got the opportunities and was told about things that existed and directions to go. I didn't have that same guidance in New York City, where most of the people around me were black.
But that's
I didn't
not
have it.
But that's not a societal obstacle.
That's a system.
information. No,
that's a system. The education system.
Hold on. But colleges exist. There's no hiding a college. You drive down the road, there's a college. You inquire, you say, what is that? It's a college. It's a place to get educated. Nothing in the system stops you, or anybody in this country for that matter, from applying to a college, enrolling. Actually, it's easier for you now to get into a college than for me. If we both applied, you'd have a leg up over me, because they have quotas now to have to accept a certain amount of folks. So grade point average, I know you could laugh, but it's a fact. And I want to go back to the other.
It's simply not true.
It is true. And you
It's
haven't
not
given any
true.
evidence to the contrary.
But you haven't either. That's a statement that black people have more opportunities than white people.
I'm using your experience where you say, I have 2 master's degrees, which means you also have bachelor's degrees, or a degree. You went to school, got 3 degrees. Nothing stopped you. You now are vice president, I think you said, of a school?
Vice principal.
Vice principal, and you also have a music career. Again, nothing is stopping you. And that's all I'm saying is your experience is what I'm using. I'm not making anything up without proof. I'm using your experiences. So what you've done, anybody can do. There's nothing that you did that was out of the norm other than going to school and applying yourself. And I also want to go back to where you said about the property and white Americans or whatever are living off the fruits of slavery. 25% of the South was slavery. That's it, 25%. Not the 100% of the South. Only 25% of the population owned slaves. 75% did not. Texas didn't have slaves until the mid-1800s because it was outlawed because they were owned by Spain and Mexico. So they only had slaves for 20 years. I don't see what came out of slavery that today, the wealth that the United States has created, came directly from slavery. So if 25
free labor, you don't think free labor?
That's not my point. That's not my point.
So
I'm not
your
saying
last statement. Say it again.
I'm
Your last
saying
statement.
free labor is not transferred to today's times. That labor did not create wealth that rolled forward for 150 years.
Your parents having money doesn't change your experience.
My parents and relatives are from Ireland. They didn't grow up here.
Parents,
And he just mentioned his
parents
family's
of the
from Italy.
people,
Which-
parents
which
of the
people?
people,
But which people?
who
And that-
lived in America, who consider themselves American.
But what was the population then? You're basically, the Black Lives Matter movement is coming back and saying somehow there's a collective white establishment out there that somehow owes money, owes reparations for things they didn't do, for things they were never a part of, things they never had any connection to.
Well, this is why we're not talking about individual white people. You. It's not that kind of conversation.
But who are these phantom people then that
It's
owe
not
the money?
phantom people. It's the government. The government did give money to American people, American white people. The government gave not only money, but also land. And black people, and the government understood that this was a specific thing, land ownership, that helped create wealth for entire communities, which was why black people, once freed from slavery,
All right, we
were
gotta-
guaranteed 40 acres and a mule.
We got to take a
That's
call right now.
specific
We're going
thing.
to take a call right now.
Okay.
Let's go to Chris from St. James on line 1. Chris, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? I'm doing.
You
really
got
good.
about 45 seconds to a minute. So
Yeah, really quick. I think Black lives does matter. Absolutely, 100%. All Black lives matter. But the problem is that the movement itself has been hijacked, and all black lives matter only if it's a Democrat. Because I've seen numerous videos of conservative blacks being attacked by Antifa, who are mostly white. Who Antifa has hijacked the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's what frustrates me the most, is that they want to say Black Lives Matter, but as long as they're, Democrat or liberals is when they matter. And that's what frustrates me the most. And I'm sure many people out there listening feel the same way.
Regi, you want to entertain that question?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's all I can say, that I agree. I think the Black Lives Matter must be a sentiment that comes directly from the people who state it. And if we're trying to say that Black Lives Matter must have a specific goal, I don't think that can be the case. I only believe that Black Lives Matter because I believe it, not because it is a statement from any organization or other group of people who make a decision about what ideas I can have. I believe Black Lives Matter, which is why I say it.
Okay, Chris, thank you for the call. We now have Adam on line 2. Adam, how are you?
Hey, how you doing today?
What would you like to contribute to this debate?
Oh my gosh, there's just so much to go with. I think starting.
Well, you got 1 minute.
All right, that idea that racism has to say in law that black people are somehow inferior and must be treated differently. In fact, we can look at the outcomes of legislation and what comes from that. For example, black and white people smoke pot at the same exact rate, except black people are incarcerated 4 times as much. We can look at black people being pulled over 3 times as much, except at night when you can't tell who is exactly driving the car. This idea that BLM is some hijacked anarchist movement is absolutely ridiculous. They are advocating for social change. I don't know about this reparation BS. However, this idea that we can enact legislation to fix the ingrained racism in our society, as Regi stated already, this idea that blacks were not even allowed to move to the suburbs in the 1950s, right? You couldn't get a mortgage if you were black. You walk into a bank, they're going to deny you. And what happened to those suburb houses, right? Those properties, you own them, they're going to go way up in value, right? Wealth is in land, and blacks have been denied land in this country for over 150 years. The idea that slavery only existed for 20 years in America is absolutely ridiculous. The first slave came in 1619. Thank you.
All right, Adam, thank you for the call. Brian, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah,
you got 30 seconds.
All right, I think we got to jump at his first that Black Lives Matter, because he cited the organization, that they're looking for social change. Well, again, what social change are they looking for with 100 million, 12 million, 10 million, another 100 million from Walmart, Microsoft, et cetera? Where's that money going? Where are these after-school programs? Has anybody seen Black Lives Matter stand up and hold a press conference to the programs they're going to institute with those money? Or is that money being funneled to the Southern Poverty Law Center? Is it being funneled to the NAACP, which is a well-known liberal organization? These politicians are taking this money and these organizations, and they're passing it through each other. This organization is all about the money. It has nothing to do with Black Lives.
Well, I think she did say that she wasn't talking about the...
I'm talking about the caller. Okay. I just responded to the caller. And lastly, if Black Lives Matter, where are all the black folks standing outside Planned Parenthood, where black babies are aborted? New York City, 50% of babies are murdered in the womb. Where's the respect for life there? I can tell you there are white people standing outside Planned Parenthoods across America helping black, and my mother was one of them, and she saved countless black children outside Planned Parenthood. And I could tell you a story offline about it. But that's the general the feel about life has to be consistent, and it's not. It's about political power, which is what we're saying.
Let's get to one more caller. We have Sue from Massapequa. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, I'd like to comment on 2 things. One is the whole idea of reparations. My ancestors weren't even in this country at the time of slavery. So does that mean they're going to put in motion something in place that anybody whose family wasn't here, we aren't including the reparations? Number 1. Number 2, a previous caller touched on this but didn't have time. What color were the people who sold slaves out of Africa? Were they white people or were they black people? Like, all these things just drive me crazy, because I would like to look at the progress that we've made as opposed to how oppressed everybody is all the time. You know, and I'm a very hard-working person, and I don't have anything given to me, and I don't expect anything given to me, and I think that's why I've been so successful.
Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. Regi, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, Sue.
30 seconds.
Yes.
Starting now.
Sue, so there was a point that you made about
The color of the people selling?
maybe the color of the people that are, I don't know.
She said the color of the people who actually sold slaves.
Yeah, but I just want to say, Sue, that my purpose of talking about building people and building, I'm talking about building. I'm talking about America is not done. We evolve. Like, our country has done well in change, and my argument is that we just not stop developing. We can continue. We can do better. Black Lives Matter is an acknowledgement that as we grow, we can continue to grow, that there's still work to do. And I'm not sure what the beef is about fighting against that we can continue to develop, that we don't have to stop developing, that we can acknowledge that there are places that we can improve upon. That's simply my argument, that Black Lives Matter is a statement that we need to continue to consider the ways that we are being inequitable and fix those ways.
We have 2 minutes left on the dot right now. I have one question for both of you. 30 seconds. Do you believe there's a certain political party that we can blame for this slow change that we're talking about? And if there is, why haven't we voted them out? Why do they continue to remain in power? Let's go with you first, Brian, and we'll end up with Regi. 30 seconds.
Yeah, you're asking which party has caused all this? Is basically slow walking this? It's the Democratic
Which party is in control of the places where most of this stuff is taking place, and why are they still in power?
They're in power because it's the Democrats in the major cities. They're in power because they have convinced an entire generation of people that they need to be dependent on the government. Shelby Steele has a great column, a great line. He says, liberalism stole black problems from black people. And what he meant by that was they've now convinced black people that they will solve all their problems. You heard it in the vice presidential debate. You heard it in the presidential debate. Healthcare. If Coney Barrett is confirmed, they're going to take away your healthcare. Well, it's a government solution. We're going to build you housing projects. Well, you didn't hear them say to white people, we're going to put you in housing projects, did you? No, and this is liberalism, and it goes from Baltimore all the way across the United States into Oakland. You see those problems.
Great. Miss Angelou, final comment. 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah. State the question again, please. Is there a political party?
Is there a political party you can place the blame on?
I think the founding fathers would be rolling over in their grave if they saw America so polarized like this and believing that there is one political party on this side and one political party on that side. We need to think about what issues are, what actual needs the people have. We need to think about economics and healthcare and food justice. And all these things are individual things. They are not attached to one individual party. I think that we really have to be thoughtful about our voting, and we can't depend on a party to tell us who to vote for. It's all about the individual voters' right to know who the people are that they're voting for and not just associate them with red or blue.
I really want to thank you both for coming. It was an amazing debate. I think we convince a lot of people we have to do more listening and less talking, and that's what happened here. This is Captain C saying thank you to everyone for listening, especially those who called in to deliver their perspective. I want to thank our sponsors, Suffolk County PBA, Nassau County PBA, Victory Recovery Partners, United Mavericks, the good folks at the Building and Trades Council of Nassau and Suffolk, and Wordman from Suffolk Politics. Check them out at SuffolkPolitics.com. All proceeds from the show go to Veterans for More Responsive Government, Long Island's leader in providing holiday meals to homeless veterans, Christmas, Hanukkah toys to the children, as well as vets in need with car repairs and back bills. Anything to help our disabled vets return to the workforce. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for listening.